Hello, everybody. Thank you to join this webinar. So hello, welcome to Crush to Cellar Webinar Series. Crush to Cellar is the one-stop shop for all your winery needs, for the small to very large wineries. We are located in Newberg, Oregon, in the heart of the Willamette Valley, and are serving the wineries in Oregon and in every state. We're sharing our building with the most reputable and accurate wine laboratory in the nation, ETS Laboratory. Crush to Cellar carry all the major brands for your everyday winemaking protocol and procedure. We sell fermentation product, yeast, nutrient, enzyme, bacteria, fining agents, stability agent, bulk chemical, but also packaging product, natural cork, tin capsules, screw cap, crown cap, viduals. We also do barrel alternative product, hardware, valves, pumps, small equipment, tanks, kegs, hoses, racking equipment, sanitization product, steamers, lab equipment, glassware, and also filtration product. My name is Sébastien Marquet. I'm commercial director and your host today. If you have any question during this webinar, please feel free to write them down on the Q&A question, and we'll go through them at the end of the webinar. So let me introduce you to our guest today, Maria Peterson, Filtration Specialist, Media Specialist at Scott Laboratory. Maria, welcome.
Thank you, Sebastian. It's very lovely to be in the, it feels like I'm at the Crush to Cellar store front. and Terry's going to walk in any minute, and not too far away there's going to be a Pinot Noir vineyard, and it's going to be lovely.
So Maria, can you introduce yourself, please?
So I am Maria Peterson. I hail from South Africa, where I grew up and studied winemaking and viticulture at Stellenbosch University, and then, like so many of my countrymen and women, you get that travel bug, and you know, very quickly do a lot of harvests in a short time, and kind of go where the harvests take you. And then eventually, after just about 15 years of doing that, I landed up at Scott Labs and get to answer questions about filtration. So exciting.
So where are you now? Can you can you explain us your surrounding?
Yeah, so I am based in the North Georgia mountains, and it's a lovely sunny day. It's not that hot, maybe 80 degrees, and it's not that humid, which is very strange. Only about 45% humidity. Yesterday it was like 75% humidity, a little bit of a different story, but yeah, there are a few vineyards and wineries around here. Of course, they do mostly varietals that work in this climate. So I don't get to see a lot of them with these strange times that we live in, but yeah, it's beautiful up here at the foot of the Blue Ridge Mountains. So
wonderful, thank you for sharing that. You know, we are going to start. So the concept of a webinar at Crush to Cellar is very direct to the point. Winemaker, you know, I would say always need practical answers to the questions. So, you know, so I'm going to ask you 10 questions, and you will give us 10 practical answers that winemaker can relate to. And this is it. So the first question is, give a short history on the evolution of lenticular media.
Okay, so if we look at where lenticular came from, it's made of the same media as sheet filters, right? So sheet filters, they're this year over, I think it's nearly 131 years or 132 years old. Lenticular started back in maybe 60 years ago, but it's only really the last few years that they've really come full circle, so to speak, and the design of the ones that we really feel work for us in the food and beverage business are the ones that are backflashable, reusable, and they stand up to multiple uses and storage between uses. So it's sometimes you will talk to a winemaker that's been in the business for a long time, and if they have a very strong opinion about lenticular on the negative side, then it means mostly that they've not worked with regenerable, meaning backflashable, forward flashable media, and they've not had a good experience because they can be quite expensive if they're not regenerable.
Thank you. What are some of the advantages of lenticular media versus filter sheets?
Okay, so if you've not seen a lenticular filter, you should check out our video on our website. That was my first week at Scott Lab. Zach said, so by the way, you're doing this week. We're making videos. And I'm like, really? And what can you do? What could I say? No. So here we are, like setting up this lenticular filter, and you can see the footprint is a lot smaller than a sheet filter. The setup and tear down time is a lot shorter. You actually, if you compare the surface area with lenticular to that of sheet, you're going to see it's a lot more surface area in a much smaller space. So you're going to be able to save on the amount of water it takes to sanitize. But the biggest thing is that you can push out with gas much more efficiently. So your losses are a lot lower. So the two biggest things is the labor savings and the product savings. And other than that, a lot less maintenance on a lenticular housing. Yeah, there's also a whole advantages of lenticular document that you can download and have it all black and white and check it out. But it really is about ease of use. You can, I had a 12-inch one high that I used to just travel with in the Scott Lab Prius, and it fit in a little Prius, and you could just take it and go filter. And so it looks a little bit like R2-D2. So if you are into the Star Wars thing, then this is a great tool to have. It keeps the humor going. So
thank you. What are some of the downside to lenticular filtration?
So the biggest thing is the storage of the media. You have to manage storing the media between uses, and it takes just checking out the storage solution, making sure it's still fresh, making sure that media is submerged all the way, and that you took out the silicone O-rings and didn't just forget about them. Because if you've ever forgotten a silicone O-ring in a low pH or a ethanol solution, you would see that it becomes O-ring soup pretty quickly, and you just see little pieces of rubber floating around, and that's not the goal. So, some winemakers would be, I don't know if I want to store this media between uses. I kind of worry about things growing in that media, and that's the whole reason why you're going to regenerate, and then you're going to store the media either externally or in the housing. If you store it in the housing, you would do so for shorter periods of time, just because you also don't want to start dissolving the O-rings of your housing and wearing down the hold down device. So it's just a matter of thinking about it just a little bit differently. It's not like a sheet filter where you use the sheets and then you throw them out. Here you keep the media, you reuse it, you record pressures and volumes as you should with sheets. But that is kind of the downside. But I think the upsides far outshine the downsides.
Do they fit in a 5-gallon bucket, or can you store them in this type of container?
So 12-inch, so the smaller of the two sizes that we offer is 12-inch and 16-inch. 12-inch will not fit in a Home Depot 5-gallon bucket because it tapers to the bottom. Those, I think they call them a 7.8 or an 8-gallon brew fermentation bucket with a lid. They fit in those. And the 16-inch media, that's a little bit bigger, right? So if you think about a 12-inch module, that is the equivalent of 12 sheets in a 40 centimeter by 40 centimeter plate and frame. 16-inch Super Disc 2 is 35 sheets. So that's quite a big increase in surface area. So if you have a 16-inch module to store, that's not going to fit in a bucket. So that would be more like a Rubbermaid tote, or you would also be able to store it in harvest picking bins I've seen used with the lid. So yeah, it's just that the 16-inch is a little bit bigger, and you're also going to run the storage solution through it before you store it, because it's such a lot of surface area that if you just take it wet after you did a sanitization or just a rinse, and you put it in a storage solution, that storage solution is not going to go everywhere. So it's just a little bit of a difference between how you store the two sizes.
So what type of solution do you store them in?
So 12-inch, I prefer cheap vodka or inexpensive ethanol. Sounds a little bit more professional. If you do have a cellar staff that like the vodka tonics, then you better watch that solution, because it tends to disappear on Fridays. So if you don't, or if you're in a state where having alcohol storage solutions is actually not allowed, there are those states, then you'd use just an acidified sulfur solution. I like tartaric acid and sulfur just because tartaric is a little bit more efficient than citric acid. Citric acid is less expensive, it's softer, it's not as strong, and plus citric acid is utilized, or it's like candy to most of the microorganisms in the universe. So if you don't add enough SO2 from time to time, and you can just drop in an effervescent Enodose tablet in there, you don't have to make a fresh solution and store it every time and smell that lovely marriage of citric sulfur. Then you can drop that tablet in it. It's a really good way.
Okay. What is a split dome lenticular housing, and can you mix grade in like you can as a sheet filter by using a diversion plate? That is a very common question.
Yeah, very good question. So the split dome is like a 60. So we really only sell the 16-inch 4-high or 12-inch 4-high, and it's really for those wineries that have height restrictions. So they have a smaller facility and not ceiling heights are not winery-like, they're more house-like. And so lifting the dome, if it's a solid 4-high dome, over the whole 4-high, if there's not enough clearance, then you need to be able to take the dome off in 2 separate pieces. That's really what that's for. You cannot mix grades in that housing. That does not mean, a split dome does not mean something akin to a sheet filter that has a diversion chamber where you do 2 grades in one pass. So sorry, that's always a disappointment when customers hear that. This is literally just if you have to lift the dome into segments, this does that.
Okay, so you can put also 2 dome, one after another, and 2 different grade of filtration?
You can use dual grade media. So you can't mix a single grade media. So if you put a K100 and an EK in the same housing, the wine will just follow the path of least resistance, and you will not actually get through the EK, and you'll have internal turbulence, and it will be disastrous. It will not end well.
Okay.
So there are dual grade media. It's also called the HP grade. This one is a little trickier because this media is not backflashable. You can also not use backflash plates with them. And if you do use backflash plates with them, the 16-inch doesn't care for it. The 12-inch you will just pretty much destroy. Okay. And then the other little thing about the dual grades is they are half the amount of surface area than the single grade. So this is Super Disc 1. This is really the first kind of thing that really the Sykes factory, but the Paul Corporation bought them a number of years ago. So 1 meter squared of surface area on a 12-inch, which is the equivalent of about 6 sheets in a 40 by 40. So if you have K250 to KS50 or K100 to EK, it's 3 sheets of the one and 3 sheets of the other one. So very popular with filtering small batches, like 1 barrel of wine, or something specialized like ice wine, where you can't afford any absorption losses. The 16-inch is 2.5 meters squared, so exactly half of the 5 meters squared. So not 35 sheets in a 40 by 40, but divided by 2, so 17-ish. They're popular, especially for customers that have space issues. They don't have enough tanks to filter into, or they just don't want to have to do another pass. So, so those are available.
Okay. So I have used a filter sheet for many years. Why should I consider lenticular media instead?
So, you know, if you have a good sheet filter and the chassis isn't bent and you're not getting crazy drip losses and your everything is fine and you feel comfortable with that sheet filter, then hold on to it. You know, this is, filtration is personal. It's got to feel right for you. And if that sheet filter is just fantastic and you're just very happy with it, and the thought of lenticular makes you feel insecure, that's also normal, because filtration is inherently designed to make us feel insecure, unsure. I think if you went to winemaking school, I think the filtration module is relatively short. These days, it's fantastic. When I went to school, it was like, these are like 5 filters. You're never going to be able to afford this one. And you'll see a pressure leaf in every single winery because it was the times. But you really learn about filtration when you make the mistakes and you stand behind that filter. And if you filter and you can see and feel the benefits, then totally take it seriously. But if you have a sheet filter and you're never getting through the total volume that you have to get, so you're outgrowing it, right? Total first world problem. This is great ones to have. Then you might look at, whoa, well, if I have a 40 by 40 plate filter with 40 plates, and I'm not getting through the total batch, what about if I look at something for the volumes that I size for? So say you look at 16-inch media instead of 12-inch, which is less expensive per meter squared than the 12-inch. And you can actually get through a few of your runs without having to stop and regenerate. Now you're saving on media, you're saving on labor, and you can even grow into something. So if you have a 16-inch 4-high, you can use a 1-high post or a 2-high post or a 3-high post and just use 1 or 2 or 3 modules in there, and then eventually grow into a 4-high. And so that is very scalable, which is very nice. You could even use a 16-inch 4-high split dome, so it's split in the middle, right, horizontally. And you can use the top 2-high dome with just a 1-high post and start with 1 module in a 2-high, and then 2 in a 2-high, and then add that extra segment in, and then you can do 3 or 4. Okay. And so it really is, then you have the equivalent of a 16-inch 4-high with Super Disc 2 is the equivalent of 140 sheets in a 40 by 40 sheet filter, which is great. That is in a very small space. So definitely, you know, if you're outgrowing that sheet filter and you're pretty sure that the chassis is bent when you last moved it around and it wasn't lubricated properly and you have to get new plates because they're warped or cracked, or you haven't replaced the H O-rings between them, then sometimes, or if you have one of those great old filters that are just beautiful stainless steel plated and you start to look for parts and you realize, oh wow, they don't make those parts. You have to go and find that little Italian man in Italy to come and make the machine to make the part for you. Then it's maybe time to think about what else is out there.
Yeah.
So.
Well, thank you. Can you show me a case study to show the potential saving of switching from sheets to model?
Yeah, and I can share my screen, but what works very well is if you contact me and we can do a model for you. So, for example, and I don't know if you want me to share my screen, Sebastian, I can totally do that. Let me just see, where did I put it? Okay, yeah, so sure. We share this screen. It says host disabled participant screen sharing, so you got to give me.
Yeah, I give you the
permission.
I'm going to put you make host.
Ooh, all that power.
And now you got it.
Okay, super. So here is, we kind of measured it, right? We looked at how much time and product would you save in dollars, and can we measure it? So we had this spreadsheet, and we took this winery as an example. They were doing batch sizes of between 1,000 and 10,000 gallons. They were using a 40 centimeter by 40 centimeter with 40 plate sheet filter, no crossover plate, and they were doing 3 grades. So they would filter through this filter 3 times. The average bottle price retail is $40. So we took we made a little, and I called them Rappahannock Cellars because it's a really cool name of a winery in Virginia, but it's not them. This is not them. So if you look at, we decided for these people what would be a good size would be a 16-inch 3-high, just because they could get through the whole volume in one pass. And so we took here, this segment in orange is what they were paying for the sheet filtration setup. So the filter time, we took into account how much time it's taking them, how much the media cost, how much the labor cost. This is the winery in Napa. So the labor is a little more expensive. And then we looked at wine loss, because every time they do a pass, you can't push out with gas as efficiently in a sheet filter as you can in a lenticular filter. So every time they lost some, we looked at the bottle price. So that wine loss, that 1,020, is how many bottles of wine would they have been able to sell in the tasting room if they didn't, if they had a sheet filter. And so you'll see on this green side, this is the filter time, this is the media cost, so more expensive than this 96. This was the labor cost, this was the wine loss, so a lot less than this one. And this wine loss is basically the absorption in a 16-inch 3-high. And then here they had to pay for the housing. So if they had a housing, here they already own the sheet filter. And so this would be the cost. This would be how much more the lenticular cost them. So the break-even point where the lenticular actually starts to make them money, and this green is money that they're being able to sell the wine in the tasting room for, is at 4,000 cases. So this is about 9,500 gallons. And so if you look at it this way, here at about 9,500 gallons, the lenticular starts to pay for itself, and the plate filter just keeps on getting, a little bit more expensive, because you're paying more in labor and you're losing more wine. So that is basically what it comes down to. If you're wanting to see what this looks like for you, all you have to do is get in touch, and we'll do a model. And it's always nice to show your bosses that you're trying to save money and wine. Who wants all that wine to go down the drain, right? The angels get enough, I feel. So that is what we did. And then just to show you, this is a split dome. So it's, in the middle. So you can use the top just at the bottom, or you can put in that extra segment. And so I think I will stop sharing. Yeah.
Okay, we have a question. Is there any difference in oxygen pickup between pads and lenticular?
Big time, especially if your sheet filter is, you haven't changed out those HO rings. And for wineries, we recommend changing it out once every 2 years. If you're a brewery, once a year, because you're pretty much filtering all year long. The oxygen pickup that can happen through those O-rings is pretty much 50% higher than with lenticular. So if you did a test, so if you have your DO meter and you're testing it before and after, this is the best way for you to figure out in your winery what is happening, because you might not be getting the DO from the media, you might be getting it through plates that are slightly warped or cracked or just aged, and you might be getting them from bad hoses, you know. So with the lenticular in general, and this is also why they're so popular with the brewing industry, is they immediately can tell when they measure, because in brewing they measure constantly. Oxygen is like a bad word for them. That we wouldn't be switching so many breweries to lenticular if there wasn't a very good reason, and DO is a big one. So definitely. I see also we have a question, backflashable. Our current 30-inch cartridge filters obviously only allow the wine being filtered to pass one way. When you say it is backflashable, if the media gets clogged, does this mean we could just run the filter in reverse flow and unclog the media? Very basic description of what I have in my head. So very good question. Remember, we're talking about lenticular modules. Cartridge filters are a separate thing. So those are the cartridges on the bottling line. If you have a pre-filter cartridge, you can totally backflash it. A final membrane cartridge filter on the bottling line, most of them are not backflashable. So what we mean with backflashability in lenticular is, and I'm going to share my screen again just to kind of show you this. So if you look at this module, this is a Super Disc 2, and you'll see this is the cage around it. So if this gets clogged up with, you know, surface caking on the outside, the way that we tell that it's time to do a backflash, so you're going to literally vent it, you're going to push out the wine, you're going to vent the top, you're going to go in the reverse direction. So now you're going to go from the inside of the module to the outside, and you're going to get rid of surface caking. You're never going to do this for longer than 10 minutes, and you might not see the water run clear, but it's just a mechanical means of removing anything on the outside of the media. So if you think about a sheet filter, those sheets are sitting tight against that plate. Doing a reverse flow, if you've ever done this, normally on a Friday afternoon, and it's 4 o'clock and your flow rate has slowed down to like a trickle, and you're like, I need to leave, I need to go. And you do a backflash, you'll see a bunch of solids come out and then clear. So you didn't actually remove much solids, right? You just reversed what was able to get out. That when a plate sits close like that next to the sheet, there's no way for that caking to go. So you're basically not able to backflash sheets as well as lenticulars. And then you switch to a forward flow regeneration, because now you're going to dissolve the soluble compounds in that media. And you can do the same with sheets. The forward flow regeneration is very useful. It's actually better to do than a backflash on sheets, but here doing both. And if you do read all the lenticular operating instructions, and on our website there is a ton of information on it. You will have so much reading material. You would not have to read the TTB website to fall asleep. You can just read my articles. Then you'll see with cartridges, so the skinny ones that you use for bottling, they pre-filter cartridges are backflashable, but when you're using them on the bottling line, we're assuming that the wine is already lower than 1 NTU, so no suspended solid. So you shouldn't have to backflash. So I hope that helps in short.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much, Maria. And next question. Can I filter sparkling product with lenticular?
Yes, very good question. And I'm going to say that the biggest thing, and this might be a negative on lenticular, but it's the same cellulose-based media as sheets, right? So unfortunately, lenticular media is not indestructible. You still have to stay within the pressure parameters. So it's very nice to be able to use lenticular to filter sparkling wine, and we have many customers doing so safely and happily. The biggest thing is to make sure that the equipment you're using can take that pressure, right? So if you're doing a lower carbonated level versus a higher carbonated level, make sure that your equipment is rated for that, your hoses, your pump. Working with that kind of pressure is a little scary. So you just want to make sure that when you do pressurize these housings when they're empty, that you're taking the proper safety precautions. The media, the Superdisc 2 media, can take a pressure of maximum differential pressure of 35 psi, right? So when you filter using these filters, you're going to start out between 5 and 7. That's going to give you the minimum flow rate that we advertise for them. And then you're going to filter until your pressure builds up to 17, so 17. And then that's your cue to do your regeneration. So backflash followed by forward flash. If you wait until 20 psi, you've kind of plugged a lot of stuff in there that you could have backflashed out before your media becomes too clogged up. So you just want to make sure that then you don't go over 35, because then you're blowing holes in your media. So that's the biggest thing. Keep it just like sheets, keep it low and slow. Light candles if you must. Play Bob Marley to keep you calm. It's don't rush it.
Well, thank you. Why wouldn't I just get a crossflow to do the switch from a sheet filter?
If you've got that kind of money, awesome. Go for it. Crossflow is also come a long way. You know, some of those filters have, in the past, I heard some horror stories of a crossflow heating up the wine so much that it was pretty much cooked, and all the things that you worked so hard for in that wine totally got, literally proteins denatured, and the wine was undrinkable. So they've come a long way, but again, it's personal. So if you are pro crossflow and you like what it does, and your batch sizes are big enough where you're like, you know what, I need to be able to filter 20,000 gallons in a shot, and I don't have the time to switch out media in a lenticular, then that's absolutely perfect. But just remember, you're never going to get away with just one filter in a winery. It's very rare that you have just a crossflow, because those do tend to break down from time to time. So don't throw away that sheet filter yet. Better yet, get a lenticular, because the nice thing about the lenticular is we see them used in the smallest to the very largest wineries. It's not that, and I think that might be your next question, and we'll get into that a little bit. But with crossflow, even better is if you can have a mobile service that does well for you. But again, it's personal. You totally need to feel it out. The gut has to feel right about the way that you're filtering. It's a critical process in your winemaking. And if you're very against filtration and you're like, I don't filter, remember, you're starting to filter when you start picking the grapes. That's when filtration starts. The separation process isn't when you're like, oh crap, I need to filter. We're bottling next week. You already have to think about filtration from the standpoint of destemming as a filtration process. Racking off the lees is a form of filtration. It's just not through a media. So if you think about it a little bit broader, then it becomes much more interesting, in my opinion.
I have a question. The backflush has to be done manually during filtration, as happened in some crossflow?
Manually, correct. We do have a technology, and that is a lenticular filter, but it's not a lenticular filter in the, so lenticular, if you think about a lentil, right, the lovely pulse that we don't eat enough of, which is so healthy, that kind of looks like a football, right? So like that. And if you think about that, there's another one on top of it. My camera is a bit funky, but they're kind of like on top of each other, right? That's where the name comes from in a lenticular filter. There are these cells of filter sheets on top of each other. And if you look at it, it just looks like little lentils stacked on top of each other. That's literally where the name comes from. There are some other technologies that they're not necessarily a lenticular, because they don't have those cells. They're like a big format cartridge filter, but they also look like, if you look at them quickly, you're like, oh, it looks like a lenticular, but it's pleated polypropylene or pleated glass fiber. Those can be automated to do the backflash for you. you can build any kind of automation into your any kind of filter media that you set up. So the housings that we sell, they're all manual. If you go to Europe and you go to the smallest winery, you're like, wow, you have a monoblock and you have an automated membrane filter. How, that's amazing. And then you come to the States and everything is still very manual. So it's like when you get back out traveling after this crazy time we live in, it will be interesting to see when we go back to Europe, like look around and you'll be amazed at how the smallest wineries have this all figured out, right? And you can automate basically anything. So yeah, but in short, for now, the backflash is done manually until you automate.
Tell me about adjusting filterability in line with bottling with lenticular instead of a sheet filter in line.
Okay, so if you've ever had to set up a sheet filter in line with bottling, you know that maybe lots of colorful language was used that day and you started focusing on filtration instead of bottling. So when we bottle, the goal, or the way I look at it, is those cartridge filters, those sterile membrane final and pre-filter cartridges, they should just sit there. They should shut up. They shouldn't build up too much pressure, and they're just there as an insurance, so that you don't get microorganisms through to the bottle. Now, if you're taking wine that has maybe you're not testing filterability, but the wine is going to clog those final filters. Now you have to look for a way to adjust filterability. Doing that with the sheet filter is very challenging because sheets are not designed to work with the stops and starts on a bottling line. It's very easy to get bypass. You have to stand there and monitor that sheet filter and make sure it's doing its thing, or you have to have a hose that goes back to your source tank so that it's always filtering. There's no way for it to stop and start. Long story short, it's messy, it's not nice, you lose wine on the way there, it does not spark joy. So lenticular, smaller footprint, a lot more surface area in a small space, so you can do a lot lower differential pressure runs. And so we have these lenticulars called Supra Pack for the really big, and they're not a lenticular, again, they're a different technology, but these module filters that sit in line with bottling, and they can adjust filterability in line with bottling at 120 gallons a minute. So from the smallest, if you just have a little 12-inch one high and you're putting an EK or an EK1 module in there, you're running at 3 gallons, 4 gallons a minute, and then you can go up to 16-inch 4 high, 45 gallons a minute, and then you can go Supra Pack 6 high, 120 gallons a minute. So it looks like a fatter version, a little bit taller version of a regular cartridge housing. But if you have issues at your winery where the seller has sent the wine to the bottling part of the winery, and you start bottling and it starts clogging, now you're pointing fingers to the seller because you're like, you didn't filter this right. And the seller says, no, but you didn't bottle it quick enough, because if you leave it too long, you're going to have these colloids are going to start reforming, and they're going to be like, hey man, how's it been? We haven't seen you in forever, even though it was like yesterday. And then they join hands and they make these long chains, and it gets to the bottling filters, and your bottling filters do what they're supposed to do. They clog up. So this is actually a good thing that they clog up, because they are not letting things, including the microorganisms, through. But the lenticular is a very cost-efficient way to adjust this for you, especially post crossflow, because crossflow tends to do funny things to the associated colloids. So on a, to give you an idea, on a 16-inch 4 high, we see some wineries that get a throughput of 500,000 gallons, adjusting filterability after crossflow before they have to change out the media. So and the final filters don't clog up. They're only removing the last microorganisms that may have gotten through. So very, very popular way of not having those headaches with bottling.
Thank you. Where can I access some more detail regarding operating, setup, storage, and regeneration of the media?
So I will share my screen, because I didn't want to put this in the thing because we didn't have a new website yet. So if you look at our website, you'll see we have this learn button here. So filtration, and then you can just look here at topics. Let's just say lenticular and apply filters. So the advantages, you don't have to worry about botanicals unless you're filtering cannabis extracts, which is very much fun. Here's the thing on hard seltzer, there's beer. Here is the sizing guide for wine. Here is the setup and usage, how to store the lenticular between uses, operating instructions, storage and maintenance, and then how to regenerate the filter, so backflash and forward flash, sanitizing and filtration. We kind of broke them up, but if you do open if you open something like this, you can just go to the bottom and download the guide, and here is everything: how to install, how to regenerate, how to store the media. And we do recommend, this is tedious, but this is why you have interns. And if you are the intern, then you win, because you get to tell everybody else in the winery how to do this. You read through all of this, and then you make your own standard operating procedures for your situation. You might not want to set your filter up with, the tea coming this way. You might have the tea here and another hose coming in for the backflash. So you write your own SOPs based on all of this, and then you're the boss, basically, because now you know more than everyone else. So I prefer to be the intern. And then here, how to store, this should take you to how to store it. So
all the information I store on the new Scott Lab website?
Exactly.
Okay. Oh, cool.
And then there is, there's still so much new stuff here. There's some interesting checklists and FAQs, and, checklist for successful bottling. If you want to learn more about the lenticular inline to bottling and how you can streamline that, this is a very good one. And if you want to look at things on your sheet filter that you should be checking out, then there's a few maintenance things, and there's also, how can you minimize drip loss and DO pickup, for example. So yeah, it's like plane rides should come back so we can have time to read all these things.
So we have a question from Justin. I have used the rule of thumb that you should have your final pad filtration within 2 weeks of sterile bottling. I assume it is the same for lenticular?
So this is a very good question, because yes. 2 weeks is fine if you have a very dry white wine that is very easy to filter and you've never had problems. Like, I'm thinking a dry tank fermented Chardonnay that has never even heard the word botrytis or pediococcus, right? So 2 weeks is fine. For red wines, especially ones that are as colloidally challenging as things like Pinot Noir, or sometimes something like Merlot can be an absolute bear to filter. We see them losing filterability within a couple of hours of going through a crossflow. It's literally, you can do the testing and you'll be like, but it was fine just before I went to lunch, and now it's not. So if you do check out that checklist for successful bottling, you'll see we recommend less than 24 hours. If you're going to do the 2 week thing and it's a red and you know that you're going to fail filterability, then just put that lenticular in line and adjust it. And that is what a few people do. They assume they're going to fail. They don't do the filterability testing because it's an extra step in the lab. And there you go. It's just easier to use the lenticular. Same media, just a different format.
Okay, Justin, I hope that answered your question. Well, I think we are done with the question. I'm done with my questions. So if anybody have additional questions, please feel free to ask them now. Otherwise, you can contact Maria Peterson directly at Scott Lab. Her email is mariap@scottlab.com. So you feel free to contact her, and I'm sure she will point you to the right direction for your needs. So thank you.
I've got a bunch of teammates that can help. So it's not just me, we're an army here.
So thank you very much, Maria, for your time. Thank you, everybody, for participating to the Crush Seller webinar. Just to let you know, we sell lenticular media and models at Crush to Seller. We also, can help you to install them, and anytime you can. And we have some on the floor as well at the store. So if you want to go and come and check them out, you feel free to do so. Let's see. We have no question. No, I think we're good. Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
And please feel free to contact Maria again if you have any additional questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.